Welcome to Talking in Stations. Today is Friday, August the 12th. I'm Richman, your host, with Shen and Gergoran.
Hello,
Good
hello.
evening.
And on tonight, we have two large low-sec brawls and further fighting and incidents during the war. As the fighting over structures heightens, some of their cores and assets have been actually extracted on the retreat. The attacking side weren't able to fully take every single structure core that were dropped when these structures were destroyed. Gentlemen, talk me through the structure cores that have been dropped. They were added about a year ago, under a year ago.
September or October last year.
September the 1st last year, and these cores were added to curb the amount of structure spam in the game.
Yeah, so before the structure cores were introduced, the only thing that you need to put down a structure is literally the structure itself and some fuel if you want to keep it fueled. And so that created a problem, which is there are structures everywhere. So people will have a structure in each system. So for tethering and for docking, when they're ratting, let's say if there's newt or enemy in system, the best thing is just to align out and then get tethered on that structure. So CCP saw that as a spam of structures, and now they added the quantum cores to solve that problem in their view.
And how does it solve it?
So a core is something you buy from NPC markets. So only NPC sell them, and only NPC buy them. So if you have extra cores for some reason, let's say if you loot it from someone else, or you just have extras on hand, you can sell them back to NPC. But a core costs actually a lot compared to structure when with medium and large size structure. So for example, if you can scroll down, we can see the prices for them. Yeah, so here. So an Astra House, the core of a Astra House cost about 600 million, while the Astra House itself is about 700 million. So it effectively doubled the cost or the investment to put down an Astra House, because from the beginning of that devlog was introduced, all structures that are being newly deployed has to have a core in them if you want it to be online.
And these structures that go on.
Yeah, for those structures that are what we call them grandfathered in, which means that they had they didn't have a core in them, but after the core mechanic were introduced, but people still didn't put a core in them, they will lose ability to tether people, the ability to refit when you're docked in a structure. So basically, effectively lost its combat capability as a structure if you don't have a core in them.
And some of these have been getting stolen on the way out, I've heard.
Yeah, so that relates to the looting mechanics of those cores. So those cores are 100% drop rate when you destroy a structure. But when the core is in a cargo hold of a ship, then it follows the same drop rate as all the other items, which is 50%.
All right. Now, these cores, how would one loot these, especially under the nose of a fleet that's been shooting at it for a considerable amount of time?
Pardon?
Well, how is somebody meant to loot these underneath an attacking fleet, which has been obviously holding the field and attacking the structure this entire time? How on earth are they meant to loot it from underneath their nose?
So this goes to different type of cores. So if you scroll back to the list or it's the form, we can see the size of each core. So that's very important. So Astra House, Athenor, and Raitaru, so those are medium-sized structures. Their core is about 500 meter cubed. So that is actually very small compared to a cargo hold of a cruiser or a battle cruiser. So what people can do for those medium-sized structures core is they can literally use, let's say, example we're going to see is a Tengu with interdiction nullifier and a cover-up cloaking on it, and then they scoop the core and then try to warp out to a safe, and then either from there you can use your interdiction module to maneuver around space, or you can needlejack or do it whatever you want. And as for those large ones, so they're 50,000. So that's the same size as the deep space transport fleet hangar. So people use them to transport around. And so this is the place where it kind of gets awkward with size of ships. A deep space transport will do it, but the problem is a deep space transport is not meant for Cloaky. That's for the other one, which is the stealthy one. Yeah, and so that one is kind of hard to scoop. I mean, also you have the ability to dock, let's say, a Rorqual in a Fortizar, and then basically when the structure gets destroyed, if you're still locked in your Rorqual, then you will be dropped into space, and then you can scoop the core and then jump out. So that's the same thing for large structure cores and extra large structure cores.
Well, I see the Keepstar cores right here, 250,000 M3.
Oh, yeah. So the other one that's not deep space transport is called the blockade runner. Thanks for the chat.
253,000 M3. I do, since I was involved in EVE at the time of this update, I do remember they were meant to be a lot bigger. However, somebody who had a C2 wormhole and had a Keepstar inside complained about it, and hence they changed it to 250,000 M3, which just about fits into an Orca. That I do remember. Now,
I thought they were brought it down to 95 to fit into the Orca, was what they did.
Oh, they did. These are the old patch notes. Bugger. So, these won't fit into a DST. How does somebody scoop something of this size and of this value? 30 billion right there.
Yeah, so if it's, I think 90,000 is the number that we got, right, for the extra large structure cores. So those ones can be easily fitted into a Rorqual with expander on.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, Cargo Rorqual and Jump Freighter are really the only ships with the ability to get out fast enough, which can carry these things.
Well, I do have the fitting and the kill mail of somebody who successfully stole it but did not successfully extract it. Talk me through this Tengu.
So this Tengu is full travel fit, as you can see. So it has a warp core stabilizer, it has interdiction nullifier, but what it didn't have is a cover up cloak. So it has the subsystem in its subsystem bay instead of on the ship. So that's one thing that's a bit different with this fit. So basically, what you're trying, so when you drop out of a structure, when you're locked into a structure and things like that, you will be invulnerable. I think for half a minute to a minute. So during that time, nobody can even lock you, can do anything to you. So what you do is you open the wreck and then loot the core and then try as fast as you can to jump to a safe. In the case of a Tengu. In case of a Rorqual, you just right-click your Sino and then jump to your Sino.
I see. Well, there is a video of somebody doing this right now, which I'll play, and I'll go ahead and mute the sound. We can see that they're shooting. People are shooting at this Keepstar, and well, there goes the Keepstar, and we see the Rorqual on dock, and the guys, everybody's desperately trying to lock onto this Rorqual. However, nobody gets to lock it. And if we take a look any second now, we will see the Rorqual disappear into nothingness, far off into somewhere unknown, and he has gone ahead and stolen that 30 billion ISK Keepstar core.
Yeah, so in this case, the pilot, the attacking side did something wrong, which is they warped in the freighter too fast or too early. So the gunner was really smart in this case. So the gunner was also the pilot in the Rorqual. So since Red Alliance warped in their freighter really early, the gunner had the chance to lock onto that freighter and basically destroyed it with the weapons on the Keepstar. So they didn't have a chance to scoop it. Yeah. And then after it died, the Rorqual had a chance to open the cargo up and then jump out right away.
I'm surprised they didn't bubble the undock spot, or did something to try and prevent that Rorqual from just taking it and running off like that. All you need is a point to stop it.
If you bubble the undock, you have to worry about the point defense system.
Exactly. So when citadels like Fortizar and Keepstar, it has something called the point defense system, which has I think up to range to 20 kilometers. So before the Keepstar dies, it should still cycling that on. So any dictors and interceptors that will be within that range before the Keepstar die, it will be instant killed no matter what.
I have a solution. Why don't they just boost the bubbles onto it as it dies?
That requires very precise timing, and it's very highly skilled. It is possible in theory, but we haven't seen anything that in practice yet, I think.
Well, Keepstar thefts and core thefts have been going on for quite a while. I'm hoping by now somebody's found a way to counter it. Is there anything else we should cover on this?
Well, there was one Delve Keepstar, which did get successfully unanchored and extracted. That was the Pandemic Horde one in ETAC V, which is the other entrance to the 1DQ constellation, along with T5Z, which is currently being destroyed.
Currently being destroyed. How is the process on the currently being destroyed Keepstar?
Well, last I checked, it was max tie-dye and in the middle of the hull timer. And it will continue to be max tie-dye in the middle of the hull timer for probably the next hour and a half or so.
Well,
Yeah,
props
so
on them. They should.
Yeah, so there's a damage cap on structures. If people who don't know, so for the quickest time to kill a Keepstar under max damage cap is 24 minutes. So if you time that by 10, if it's 10% tie-dye all the way, then yeah, it's 240 minutes. That's in theory, but in reality, sometimes tie-dye can get a little bit better or a little bit worse. It depends on the situation, the server performing. So we'll see. We'll see. I think the kill mail is going to come out in the near future. I think next hour or so.
Well, probably by the time the show ends. As we say this, there is a request from CCP for people to try out their new Mac client. And for those who use the Mac for some reason, such as Matterall here, who is engineering, and I very much prefer Windows, there is a new Mac client for EVE Online. Unfortunately, there isn't a Linux one. But they are making work on a native EVE client for the Mac OS, and they would like people to test it. However, Battle just mentioned to me that the Linux client for EVE still works, but it has to work through Vine.
Yeah, Wine is... Well, the name of Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator, but it essentially functions as an emulator in most respects. Emulating the Windows operating system so that you can run Windows software on a Linux machine.
Very well. But for those who are running EVE Online on a Apple computer, Macintosh, whatever they call those, there is a test going on, and CCP would like you to join and play test and mass test it for the M1 chip. It's recommended that playtesters run the latest and non-beta version of macOS when possible. They require you to have version 10.14.6 and certain stats, 4 gigs RAM, dual-core CPU at 2 gigahertz. It's all on the site. And they would like you to leave feedback for it so they can further improve it and, improve the ability for EVE Online to reach other operating systems. Right. Shall we move on to the low-sec brawls?
Which one are we going to start with?
Well, we're going to start with the one from yesterday, and that would be Otsai. It seems that Fraternity have summoned up their fleet members and their vassals to fight it out against Snuffed Out and their friends, the Initiative, Volta, Niswa Cartel, and others. The fight, well, it musters up a huge amount of Fraternity's forces, and the price, the statistics are not accurate due to if we see this 386 billion loss. That is not accurate because the real prices of the Titans and the super capitals that died, it's just incorrect. Same with the Dreads. So I don't do capitals. Tell me about this, gentlemen.
I guess I'll start with so how did they start it? So it started with the Fraternity Azbel coming out of armor reinforcement in the system Altassa. And this basically started with that. And on the subcapital side, Fraternity brought in Munings, standard Nullsec doctrine for subcapital fights. And interestingly here, Snuffed Out brought their Tempest fleet issues as TFIs with 800 repeatings. So usually you see TFIs and Tempest in general with 1400 artillery, but this time they brought in 800 repeating. So 800 repeating, as people who don't know, they are short range, large artillery, large projectile weapons. They work really well in short range compared to long range, and their armor tank as well. So we see a lot of apostles. So the faxes, so they are there for the support of those TFIs.
I see. On the Fraternity side, we see they've lost an Erebus, an Avatar, a Ragnarok, and 2 Hells.
Yeah, so during the capital escalations, so basically both sides dropped in, I think, capitals and super capitals on top of each other, and Fraternity basically pinged down max supers. That's where we see the numbers are so high on all of them. But so during this kind of level of dread bomb, the faxes doesn't work. Basically, on those Titans, the damage was so high that they basically the first 3 I think got almost instant melt if you don't count the tie-dye.
I see. Now, these aren't the real prices. I know this because I've seen the Titans on market. What are the real prices of the Titans right now?
So a Titan right now is about 150 billion. With fitted or not fitted, that's a thing that we're seeing on contract. So I'm not a industrialist. Also, the price of those newly added industrial items or those subcomponents, they're really inflated in price too. So I don't know the build cost, but they're going on contract about 150 billion each.
150 billion. Okay, so if we add in the fittings, we could say they're around 160 billion. Is that the proper price for them?
I don't think you can accurately get the prices right now because the prices aren't really stable right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can only see on contract, which is
So
kind of not
rough,
accurate.
Okay. So a rough estimate would be these are at least 80 billion less than they should be. So 80 times 3, that's 240 billion. So the real loss of this would be 600 and around 620 billion to 500 and some 540, but the dreads are not the right price, are they? It's hard to work out the proper.
Dreads is generally speaking in the right price range. So dreads right now is about 3.5 to 4 billion each.
I see. So right now, so this fight was around 620, 630 billion to 540 billion loss. It's a loss in terms of the ISK for Fraternity side. That you mentioned that this was over an Azbel timer. Was the Azbel timer pushed into hull or was it repaired? Nobody has any idea?
I'll
look around.
I was in there.
Okay, I believe the Azbel timer was successfully defended by Fraternity, so they've proclaimed victory on the basis that they were able to save the Azbel from further destruction, and they inflicted quite a large amount of damage to Snuffed Out and their friends. Snuffed Out and their group obviously have proclaimed victory because they brought down more in terms of ISK value. After the scarcity changes and the recent industry changes, I haven't seen that many Dread Brawls, not compared to before.
Yeah,
They've
Snuffed Out
become
is a very wealthy alliance, but even they will have trouble replenishing this.
well. There is a T5Z Keepstar. There are actually no, there isn't. Not anymore. In a few minutes, there won't be a T5Z Keepstar, but there were fire sales there.
Yeah, so if you
I,
look on, go ahead.
I actually saw fewer fire sales than I saw people looking to buy fire sale dreadnoughts.
None of these dreadnoughts are post-industry dreadnoughts, right? They're just
Yeah,
We
regular
all know that.
stockpiles.
most of the capitals you see for sale now are from stockpiles that people had.
Yeah, yeah. So on the snuff side or in general, we can see the Revelation is still what we call the best dread bomb platform right now. So if you just look at the numbers, purely just in the numbers, 90 Revelation were involved compared to 10 Nagrafors and 10 Moros and 3 Phoenix. There are a few reasons for this. As the Revelation gets a skill bonus, so every level of a Mar Dreadout, you get 4% resistance to your armor. So that makes it really tanky compared to the Moros as armor tank ships. But also compared to the Phoenix, which also gets 4% shield resistance for every level of Caldari Dreadouts, the Revelation uses guns. And the thing with guns and missiles in terms of capitals is that a gun's use is way better when the targets are stationary. The good thing about missiles is when the target is moving and the missiles will always hit. So there's no glaze, there's no penetrating, there's no difference in damage. It's a hit no matter what for a missile. So the Revelation gets both. It's the gun platform dreadout, also its armor tank, and it has bonus to its armor resistance.
I have seen something interesting with these revelations. It reminds me of when Baltram's group used 1400 artilleries on their Redeemers. Somebody's fitting their revelations with autocannons. Why?
Yeah, that's a fairly common practice that Snuffed Out does a lot. They also use blasters. See, Snuffed Out relies heavily on being able to succeed even while outnumbered by every single one of them in a low sec fight will have a high grade slave pod.
We'll cover that in a moment. Does this work, fitting the wrong guns on this hull?
Yes, it does.
It does.
The purpose of this is to make sure that you can't, even though they're all running revelations, you can't just tank your ships against lasers and expect that to be a way to stay alive longer.
Yeah, so with lasers, the thing is you can only deal EM and thermal damage. Well, different ammos can do different proportions of each damage type. But in general, if you know that the enemy side is only going to drop revelations, only energy turret revelations, then what you do is you tank those two resistance to your best, right? You get 80-90% of those insane resistance with dead space modules. So when you fit artillery or blaster, they deal different type of damage, right? The blaster deals kinetic and thermal, and the projectile weapons, they deal different kinds depending on weapon type. But usually people use explosive and kinetic as is the T2 damage type for this ammo.
I see. Gergoran, you mentioned quality and being able to fight extremely outnumbered. I have my concerns for Snuffed Out fielding this amount of money because they are a small group. I'm not familiar with just how much logistics and industry backbone and money making they're able to do compared to Fraternity, which I've become more familiar with.
Well, for small groups like this, they generally won't even let you join unless they're pretty sure you can sustain your losses, and they are definitely a very wealthy alliance.
You speak about quality and fighting outnumbered. What does it mean by quality?
Well, your pilot for pilot, Snuffed Out has higher skills on average, and their ships will be fit with more expensive modules to get the most they can possibly get out of their ships. A lot of big Nullsec alliances don't really bother past Tech 2 fittings because with the fleet numbers they get into, the enemies will be alphaed off grid anyway, and they will be losing. They will be getting alphaed off grid regardless of what they put into their tank.
Yeah. Also, go ahead.
Snuffed Out typically doesn't get into fights that size, so they can rely on faction and dead space tank modules for all of their doctrines, and they will, more than anything else, their tactics are based around putting the maximum EHP on grid at any given time with doctrines that use a very substantial armor tank, whether it's legions, damnations, or faction battleships.
Go on, Chen.
This fight took place in Caldari Lowsec. So Lowsec is very different from Nullsec in terms of PvP mechanics. So in Lowsec there are no bubbles. So that means basically when you die, you have a very high chance of escaping in your pod. So that created a lot of chances or reasons to use high grade pods in fights, right? So you can basically expect those Revelations pilots to be in high grade amulet. Same thing with those TFI pilots. So that's the Tempest fleet issues.
I do. Let me just pull up a video of it actually, of yesterday's fight. Continue.
So with this in Lowsec, another thing is getting out. So Sino out. So since there are no bubble, you have to basically bring a lot of tackle ships to tackle down the enemy dreadouts in order for them to not Sino out. So you can literally turn off your siege mod and then right-click your capacitor, jump out. Well, right-click your watch list and jump out. That's a safer way to do it. But so instead of unless you get like warp disrupted or warp scrammed by the enemy tackles. And so that means in low sec fights you have to bring a lot of tackles if the enemy has a lot of capital ships on grid. Yeah. So now you can see there's a video from perspective. So this person was quad boxing a Nagrafar, a Damnation, a Apostle, and a Sino ship.
Well, okay, for the first 60 seconds I'll play the comms, but afterwards there is music going on, so I'll mute immediately.
Align to them, align. Vertisa, are you ready with the sign?
I'm right on top of the ones that were tackled. Cloaked.
Okay, all active tank apostles and dock, all active tank apostles and dock, all active tank apostles and dock. All active tanks up on dock, all active tanks up, apostles and dock.
I was about to get decloaked, I think.
Vertisa, light a sign, all active tank apostles jump to Vertisa.
It's going to be QT. Ready? Are you guys ready?
Alright, well, as we watch this, keep in mind this guy is multi-boxing around, you said 4 accounts?
It should be 4 from what I've
4
seen.
accounts, and the content is sped up, so you'll see him switching between various accounts. He'll be switching from his Damnation as Lynx, and he'll switch into his Sino, and it's a whole, well, it's a lot of mess, but it's at the same time it's rather surgical to watch. We can see the massive amounts of Fraternity Munins just swarming around the Tempest Fleet issue. You mentioned that they were using 800 autocannons instead of, well, artillery. Is there anything peculiar about that?
No, that's actually something surprising. To be honest, if you ask me, usually you see those TFIs with 1400 artilleries. The whole point of having artillery ships like the Munings and the TFIs or Macarios is to basically volley off the enemy ships. So artilleries have very high TPH, so that's damage per hit. So what you can do is 3, 2, 1 lock up the target. So you have pre-locked and 3, 2, 1 fire, and that basically can effectively instant kill enemy ships, volley them off. But in here we see 800 repeating TFIs, which is surprising. I don't think I know why that would be, but I have a feeling it's something towards they knew it's going to be a brawl, so it's going to be really close range and things like that.
I see. I have this feeling in my head that did these Typhoon fleets receive? They have any logi with them aside from the faxes, which I'm not even sure if.
I mean, Tempest fleet issues.
Sorry, Tempest fleet issues.
If you look at the BR, there, I think there are.
Well,
some
Snuffed Out
corrections.
typically when they fly faction battleship fleets, they especially Snuffed Out since they're a very capital ship focused alliance. They often rely on apostles for their logi, even for their sub-capital fleets.
So the use of these 800 cannons might have been to just DPS race the Munins as fast as possible.
That can be a possibility. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it would be really nice if we can get this FC who's in this fight who decided to use 800 repeating instead of 1400 on the show, and we have a nice chat with him.
Yeah, I'd like that too. But yeah, my God, I can see the switching in between this what looks like a Naglfar, along with the links, just constantly switching back and forth, maintaining 2 different accounts at the same time.
Yeah, and that Naglfar, if I'm not mistaken, is in long range too, so it's not a short range dread bomb you normally see. Yeah, so that one should be in the quad. I think 35,000 or 3,500 siege autocannon or siege artillery or something like that for the capital artillery platform.
I see. Oh, and he's undocked another ship to go into the fray. This one looks like an apostle of fax. Now, a fight like this, do you guys remember when Fraternity tried to catch that Revenant a few weeks back and they lost a bunch of dreads?
Yeah.
Well, BJK, the Fraternity FC at the time, pinged for interdictors, which became a bit of a funny mistake because this is low-sec, you can't use bubbles here. He has learned from this mistake, where he pinged everyone and told them that as soon as he realised the field was going to be a Fraternity victory due to the sheer numbers they were able to field, he told everybody in his fleet to point anything. He told them, anything you point will die.
That is generally true, but let's say if you have really cheap ships and stuff like that, you will get basically blapped out right away. If you get webbed and basically 0 speed, those capital guns can basically track you down with some difficulties, but it's not that difficult if you have, let's say, a Vindicator or Vigilant, right? So those 99% webs you have seen with Abyssal webs and the bonuses on the ships. It's really scary with those ways of killing people with capital ships and against capital guns against subcapital ships. I mean, but usually what you see with capital fleets, you have subcapital fleets protecting it, so that the whole point of those fleets, to be honest, is to kill off those capital ships.
Gergoran, you mentioned that every one of these pilots on grid from the Snuffed Out side probably has high-grade pods, right?
Not probably, definitely, with the exception of maybe their Sinos, but all their combat pilots do.
Oh, well, on the BR, it seems not all of their combat pilots were able to escape their pods. Some people did lose them. God forbid somebody brought in a smart bombing ship, they might have been able to lose more. But now we can see Snuff start extracting what they can. Some of the dreadnoughts were able to jump out. As we saw in the battle report, there were 90 revelations fielded on the side of Snuffed Out, but 50 of them died. 40 made it out.
Also, if you look at it, if there's a detail which is they only used pilgrim for their signals because they know they only have apostles for their lodges. So that means they have to choose an armor tanked signal ship, and the pilgrim, to be honest, is the only signal ship that can be armor tanked instead of shield tanked.
Well, you
The
can
other-
armor tank in Arazu, but the Pilgrim can fit
Is
the
the best.
heftiest armor
Yeah.
tank.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to how this Odyssey play and Gambit plays out for Fraternity. I understand they have a Keepstar there and they're planning to open some public facilities. This battle and the fact that the Azbel was able to repair, does it confirm their ownership of Odyssey and their project to go forward? Or do you think they might see more setbacks or stumps if Snuffed Out continues their campaign?
I mean, this type of fights hurts both sides. So I will say, I mean, this fight at the end I think is pretty even in terms of ISK. So I think both sides need some time to recover, or maybe not. Maybe you can see another big brawl like this every week. I mean, that's what a lot of people hopes, right? We see those stocks of dreads and those stocks of super capitals deplete really quickly. So
Yeah.
we'll see in the future. Yeah.
I would expect it to take longer to replenish Titans, and due to the fact that Titans do not insure as well and are usually not flown insured at all, and while Dreads are insured fairly well, and usually when they jump into a fight, they insure. I would expect that to affect how long it takes to replenish, and well, I've already seen a lot of Snuffed Out members looking to buy Dreads.
Well, okay. I think the last thing I want to mention is just how many numbers Fraternity was able to pull. And they called in their vassals. Cladrius, which is a Japanese alliance under Winterco, as one of their vassals. Their Fraternity University and their other time zone vassals literally triggered, and Blades of Grass. Oh, and their Cloaky Camping group, Akina Mountain Family.
Yeah, I saw that a lot in our space. That's a corp that camped our space for the longest time.
That is a lot of numbers. They outnumbered Snuffed Out, the primary group, by, well, more than 5-1 odds. But obviously, the Snuffed Out has quality. Well, I'm looking forward to what happens next in Odyssey. And speaking of one of the people involved in this fight, NSH has been involved in a dread brawl of their own. And this time, sort of Eve history has been made. The first Dagon in Eve.
The Dagon is essentially the Blood Raiders triage. It's basically a Blood Raiders apostle, so it has special bonuses to newts and I think webs because it's a Blood Raider ship. So even though it can be used in place of an apostle, usually on the rare occasion when you see it actually used, it's essentially like a very large Balgorn with a jump drive.
Well, this fight, unfortunately, for NSH wasn't so even-sided. They lost substantially more in terms of, well, ISK lost and everything else compared to their opponents, Dreadbomb and Dockworkers. And no forks given.
Yeah, we've been told by some of our sources that this was the first major fight FC'd by Brother Bob and Pittsburgh 2989 since their corporation, Original Sinners, left Northern Coalition.
I understand. Well, I know that NSH were involved in a Dread Brawl a few weeks ago before this one, but I presume this wasn't led by them. That is a poor start for some. For that is a poor start. Because, well, the loss is 311 to 63.54. It doesn't look good. Let's take a look at the summary of it. Both sides fielded, one side fielded 75 revelations compared to 24, but there seems to be a lot more balanced composition in the NSH side compared to the very revelation-heavy composition of the Rekking Crew side.
Yeah, that's partly because, NSH, even the NSH, as the name indicates, has traditionally had more activities in Nullsec where the Naglfar and other dreadnoughts can punch up comparably to the Revelation, while most of the alliances on the other side are primarily low-sec alliances.
Hold on a second. Why is a Naglfar better in Nullsec?
Its damage output is really high. I think it's the highest damage of any dreadnought.
Oh, and the implants, right? You don't use implants in Nullsec.
You're not worried about maximizing your armor tank with slave implants. So you're in Nullsec. You're going to be probably fitting a Dread Bomb Naglfar in Lowsec or Nullsec as shield buffer, and if you're not using slave implants, and because you don't get a resist bonus like both the Revelation and the Phoenix do, the pirate implants really favor the Revelation over any other dreadnought besides the Phoenix, which is not favored due to the missile mechanics being not as good for the usual use of dreadnoughts.
Well, those ships were lost, but the one that takes it for everything, really, the one that's made the news, is this Dagon. This Dagon is the first Dagon to die in Eve. If I can just find the blasted kill mail. The Dagon is a fax, but what's interesting about the fax, it is not the regular kind of fax, it is a pirate faction fax. And it could have been a loggerhead, it could have been something else, but there's something unique about the Dagon, which even I know about. It is one of the only faxes that can be used in an offensive capability due to the neutralizing and Nosferatu bonuses it gets.
Well, it's not unheard of for people to use neuting apostles. Like, I think several of them were used on the Revenant that was killed on Thanksgiving last year in November. But a Dagon basically does that, but better. And when it gets used, which it's rarely used due to being a rare and expensive ship, but when it gets used, it's usually used as essentially a Balgorn with a jump drive.
The neat thing about the Dagon and the Blood Raider ships are you can suck energy out of people even if you are full of energy. In a normal case, if you are full of energy and you try to suck energy, it doesn't work. The bucket doesn't flow that way. In this case, you are a bottomless pit in terms of energy sucking capability if you are in a Blood Raider ship.
So I think we want to get into faction capitals in general. So the way you get a Dagon BPC is to do a pirate stronghold. That's the Blood Raider variant. So once you complete that, there's a chance that you get one of the 3 Blood Raider capital ship BBC. And once you get that, you can go ahead and produce it with the capital ship components and those new subcomponents that were introduced in the industrial change. So the thing special about those Dagons and those faction dreads and faction faxes is that so with faxes and dreads, if you want to use it really effectively, you have to use the siege with triage mod. So with those mods, it gets you. So you get yourself infinite tackled. So that means there's no way you can move or anything like that. So during that 5 minutes of cycling, enemies has plenty of time to basically backphone or use the force that they have already on grid to primary you. The reason why you get primaried is, I think we explained this earlier. Let's say we're using the example of attainment, which is the Garista Dreadouts. If you that ship itself outputs similar, I would say, amount of DPS and has a similar amount of a tank compared to a Phoenix. I think it's a bit more. But when you have a Phoenix and attainment in front of you, if you're FC on the enemy side, of course you're going to go for the attainment, because once you kill that attainment, you get a lot more on the battle report in terms of its score, and it looks way better on kill board as well. So that way people don't use faction Faxes and faction Dreadouts, but they do use faction Titans and faction Super Carriers, as those ships can be repped in battle. So what people usually do is Logis will primarily rep those ships. So they usually don't die that often, unless it's, let's say, in M2. Let's say we have seen, I think one Vanquisher died in the M2 fight and things like that.
One Vanquisher died in M2. That the Vanquisher is probably the most common of the faction Titans, because its rarity is not limited by blueprint availability. For Blood Raider and Grista's faction capitals, you get the blueprints from NPC Sotios. The mechanics for running them are rather arcane, and you can be easily prevented from being able to run the site. So it's very hard to get the blueprints.
Well, I am glad to see that this elusive ship has gone down at long last. I was beginning to worry if a Dagon would ever go down in EVE when I first looked at it in 2019, but, well, it is 2021, all these things have happened, and the Dagon is dead.
And also, you can see there's a crate hole in the Dagon kill mill. So that crate loot, or the crate loot, that is, as they call it, is a corpse hold that Blood Raider capital ship has a special bay to. Basically, it has a special bay for holding corpse. So the Blood Raider Dreadouts and the Facts has 1,000 cubic meter of that, so we can hold about 500 corpse. And the Moloch, which is the Blood Raider Titan, can hold up to 1,000 corpse, which is 2,000 cubic meters.
Why do they carry corpses around them? I mean,
because they're Blood Raiders, and it's thematically appropriate for them.
Very well. I hope they don't get scanned by those Autocynthian Lancers. If you get, then if they catch you carrying corpses, they'll kill you.
Well, you're probably not going to be hanging out on gates with these things, because they have jump drives, and in a ship with a jump drive, you're probably not going to take a gate unless you have to.
Very well. Is there anything else that we should talk about in this battle report?
So just one last thing on the Dagon, or the Blood Raider ships in general. So any Blood Raider ships, you see the outside, it looks like a normal apostle, let's say, for the Dagon, and with but blood over it, right? So those bloods in lore, they're really just human blood that got salvaged from the Empire's citizens. So basically, those citizens were, I would say, hijacked it, or basically got arrested by those Blood Raider terrorists, and they basically drained their bloods and to put them on the ship, on their ships. So think about that, how much blood you can have as a person and how big the ship is, right? And it's just think about how much blood it takes to cover a Moloch.
Oh, bloody Omir must have a field day with the paintbrush.
That's a lot of blood.
Aside from the Dagon, is there anything else to comment about this battle other than NSH having a rather poor performance?
Well, I've heard some interesting stories about who the Dagon belonged to, and a lot of public discussion indicates that it was actually a misunderstanding and a friendly fire.
Oh, that. Wait a minute, a friendly. Could it have
Because
been a friendly fire?
well, there were multiple different dreadnought fleets on that side. So if one side, one of those dreadnought fleets sees this neutral Dagon that's clearly in a solo corporation, so it doesn't have standings with their alliance, they're not going to know who it is. And in general, if you see a neutral, you assume it's hostile. So if you see a neutral and it's in a very expensive, very rare ship, chances are you're going to shoot it.
I don't believe this. I don't believe this one bit. This is a freshly made account in a Dagon.
This is the story that's being told. I'm not sure if I believe it.
The only people who shot it was Dreadbomb.
Yeah.
I don't believe this story at all. Yay. But, well, they fought over this Fortizar, and NSH, well, were sent packing home. They lost, at least according to the battle reports, 5-1 ISK odds. Well, ISK loss. So that is not a good start for Pitts and friends if this is the first fleet that they've commanded, unfortunately.
How's the ISK ratio if you don't include the Dagon?
I have no idea how much the Dagon is, and it's definitely not 24 billion. It is okay. It's definitely not 20. The Dagon is definitely not 20 billion. So even if we factor in, even if we take out 20 billion from this, the ISK ratio is still pretty bad. It would be around the official one. Well, the one on the site would be around 290 to 63. It's still not looking good. Doesn't look good at all.
So right now on public contract, there's a Dagon selling for 50 billion, fully fitted.
Oh, so in reality, the ISK loss ratio would be 1 to 6 rather than 1 to 5. So it's even worse if we factor in the real price.
Yeah, let's not include the Dagon in the fight.
Yeah.
If we don't even include it, the ISK ratio would be about 4.9, 4.8. But yeah, is there anything else to cover about this fight gone wrong? I'm actually surprised that there so few super capitals were committed. I'm a little surprised. I guess both Dockworkers and Dreadbomb didn't field any super capitals to secure themselves the victory after they've started destroying these revelations.
Well, in the past, when those two alliances have been using super capitals together against Dreadbomb, it has occasionally gone horribly wrong. I mean, against NSH and others, not against Dreadbomb.
Oh, yes, I do remember the last time Dreadbomb used a super fleet. That was the Amamake fight. It ended terribly. I guess they're still cold fleet, especially with the Snuffed Out fight happening just a day before. Well, if that's all, I believe there's one last thing we can talk about before we put the show to an end. And that would be the beacon provides in UQTAC PW8. A lot of people have been jumping here. This is the last 7 days. We see 2 Hells, 2 Arcs, and 2 Rorquals. This is over 100 billion each. Over 100 billion total.
Yeah, Dreadbomb set up a bait beacon that they and Deepwater Hooligans have been camping. It's in a system with a very similar name to one on the Pappy Keepstar chain, so people accidentally click on it. One of them is UQTAC, the other is UTACQ. And people click on it thinking they're jumping to a Sino on the friendly Keepstar and end up in a beacon that's heavily bubbled and is close enough to an Astrahus and a bunch of hostiles that you're not going to make it very far.
Oy vey. Well, since you have had to evac some assets from Delve and Quirius and along the path, how have you been? How's it been for your end? Have you evac'd everything orderly?
Well, my alliance has been moving fairly slow in order to make sure everything is safe and orderly and make sure this happens as little as possible.
Shen, on the Mango side, did you have to move anything, or are you sitting ready to represent the new coalition?
I think we're good at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we're moving from a different direction. And our route is much shorter as well, right, compared to the rest of the Pappy. So I think we're set.
Yeah,
As
bait beacons are why it's generally recommended to always jump to Sinos based on your watch list rather than right-clicking your capacitor. Although the new anchorable Sinos, you have to jump from your capacitor, so if you're using that, you're probably at greater risk of accidentally clicking on a bait beacon. I think I might have almost jumped to this one because I was moving when I was fairly tired, but I didn't. I stopped myself when I realized that that was the wrong one.
Oh, good grief, man! The beacon provides, and
it's the
it's
best thing to
claimed.
do. To be honest, right now is really to have your own Sino account. Just use that going around.
Yeah, but
not a lot of people has that, and it's more convenient, right? To have another account to be able to move other ships. But for your safety, it's really nice if you are able to have a Sino account.
Yeah. The thing about is the only reason why you should even have a possibility is because you're using an anchorable Sino, which I've seen a few fleets do that.
Well, the beacon provides, and all these poor, unfortunate souls have jumped themselves to their doom.
If you're jumping to a recon ship Sino, you should always add that to your watch list and jump that way.
Well, I hope the evacuation is coming at an orderly pace, especially as the first few Keepstars in Delve start going down. I've seen a lot of the other Fortissars and other structures go down. How long until the T5Z keep goes down, Shen?
Good question. I think another half hour, maybe.
Well, I don't have another half hour, so I'm ready to wrap up.
Yeah, the move ops have certainly affected the price of isotopes that are used in jump fuel.
Did you make some more profiteering from people who are desperately to evac?
On the first day when isotopes were shooting up pretty heftily, I bought enough to get all of my caps home, and then I listed what I couldn't fit into my caps on the T5Z market, and I made a slight profit off of that, but still the prices I listed are actually less than the current Cheetah price of isotopes are.
Well, I hope everybody's got their stuff evac now. And I hope people stop jumping to this beacon because it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch.
I'm going to have to buy more fuel blocks for my reactions soon, and I hope that isotope prices go down and drag, because isotope prices drag up fuel block prices.
Also, there's a EVE Academy video. I don't know if you want to share it. That's about wormhole mechanics.
I don't have that video. If somebody could take care of that.
So we're gonna share the EVE Academy video. That's newly released on YouTube. That's about wormhole.
I got it. Give me a moment.
It's in that channel. Wait. Yeah.
Oh, it's 8 minutes long, so I'll play it on double speed since we're going to be needing to wrap up soon. But we'll play it out. I'll turn the sound on, but I believe we'll be wrapping up here. We've covered everything that needs to be covered for the last day or two. And this was Talking in Stations with me, Richman, your host, and Gergoran and Shen as my backup supervisors to give me a chance to breathe and think. Take care, everyone.
While exploring in EVE Online, you'll sooner or later happen across a wormhole. These mysterious holes in space can lead almost anywhere, including distant, mysterious systems far removed from normal space. While wormhole space can be dangerous, it can also be extremely lucrative for those capsuleers willing to brave the darkness. Wormholes are hidden cosmic signatures and can only be located through scanning, much like relic and data sites. If you need a refresher on scanning, check out this Scanning Basics video. Once you have a wormhole fully scanned, you can warp to it to find an ominous spherical portal in space. Before diving in, you should assess the hole to gather information. Right-click and show info on the wormhole to bring up more details. This will bring up a panel which displays useful information about the hole, including where the wormhole leads to, such as a high, low, or null security system. If this text mentions unknown parts of space, then it leads to a wormhole system outside of normal space. Wormhole systems are divided into 6 different classes, commonly known as C1 through C6. These represent the danger of the NPC sites and relative hostility of any environmental effects that you might encounter. When this text reads simply as unknown space, you know that this is a C1, C2 or C3 system. If you see dangerous unknown parts of space instead, then it's a C4 or C5, and deadly space refers to a Class 6 system. Determining the exact class of a wormhole is a bit more difficult, as this involves relying on visual clues from the wormhole itself, or looking up the wormhole type out of game. In the centre of a wormhole, you can see the background nebulae of the system on the other side. Higher class wormholes appear darker and more red than lower class ones as a general rule, but more on that later. On the next line, you can get a rough idea of how long's left before this wormhole collapses, disappearing forever. If it reads end of life, then take care, as the wormhole will collapse sometime within the next 4 hours. The last 2 sections refer to the maximum size of ship which can jump through that wormhole, and the total remaining mass. If enough large ships pass through the wormhole, then it will eventually collapse and sever the connection. Collapsing a wormhole by passing ships through it is commonly referred to as rolling. The visual appearance of the wormhole can give you additional clues as to its nature. In the centre of a wormhole, you can glimpse the sky on the other side. This can allow you to identify the specific class of wormhole system that you're looking at. Wormholes leading to Class 1 systems have grey clouds and black features. They are overall very muted in colour. Class 2 wormholes have a more brown hue, and are most easily identified by black cloud, visible within a brighter grey cloud. Class 3 wormholes will again have a background of grey clouds, but you will notice bright red clouds visible among them. Class 4 wormholes have a distinct dark red colour, with contrasting bright white and dark black clouds. Class 5 holes are dark reddish brown, and appear somewhat more muted than their Class 4 counterparts. And lastly, Class 6 holes are a vibrant and violent mix of orange and reds. If the wormhole leads to known space, you can even identify the region it leads to by looking at the nebulas visible in the background. The wispy rings dancing at the edges of a wormhole also give you information at a glance about what ships can pass through it. A pure blue colour indicates it's a small wormhole through which only frigate-sized ships may pass. Teal indicates the wormhole is medium in size, allowing ships up to battle cruisers to pass through. Grey indicates a wormhole through which any subcapital ship can pass. And lastly, a yellow-gold colour indicates a massive wormhole through which even some capital ships and freighters may be able to travel. Now that we know almost everything there is to learn about this wormhole, it's time to venture inside. If you're feeling confident, right-click the wormhole and choose Enter Wormhole to pass through it. When you jump into a wormhole system, you'll find yourself far from home in a system represented by a J followed by a 6-digit number, commonly referred to as a J-code. Notice that these systems have a -1 security value, meaning that you need to watch out for other capsuleers hidden in the darkness. Cloaking devices in wormholes are both commonplace and highly recommended. You may also notice an environmental effect in the wormhole, which can be seen above your capacitor. If you need more information about the wormhole itself, including the exact class of the wormhole, you can find out by checking capsuleer-created intel tools online. There are no Stargates or NPC stations in wormhole space. Navigating between systems is only possible by using a scanner, so be sure to right-click and bookmark your way home before venturing further in. Local chat in wormholes operates in delayed mode, meaning that you won't appear in the list of pilots unless you type in local. While you cannot directly see if other players are in the system with you, you can, however, use the directional scanner to search for ships within range that you should be aware of. The D-scan menu can be opened by clicking the Scanners button next to the capacitor and clicking on the directional scanner. This will open the directional scan window and the system map. Because we'll be using D-scan often, we can undock the directional scan window from the system map by clicking the Undock button. There's plenty to do in wormhole space, including some extremely profitable pirate faction data and relic sites. These can be found by scanning within Class 1, 2 and 3 systems in unknown wormhole space, though be careful not to accidentally warp into a sleeper-infested hacking site if you value your ship, that is. When you're ready to return from wormhole space, you can simply try to head straight back out the way you came. If you jump out within 5 minutes, however, your ship will become polarized to that wormhole connection for 5 minutes since your first jump, preventing you from jumping back again for a short time. This isn't a problem most of the time, but don't let polarization catch you off guard when you're on the run from a less than friendly player. Wormholes by their nature are transient pathways, and whether a connection collapsed from the massive multiple ships passing through, or simply from its natural lifetime coming to an end, you might find that your way home is gone. This can be a scary experience, but it does not mean you're trapped, as long as you have your trusty probe scanner. Every wormhole system has one or more static wormholes, which originate within the system and lead to other areas of space. A Class 2 wormhole system, for example, will always have at least one connection into wormhole space, and one back out to high-sec, low-sec or nullsec. The types of statics will vary from system to system, but you can always find at least one new wormhole to follow. Understanding and utilising wormholes can be a great way to make ISK, or visit faraway places with just a few jumps. Some capsuleers even choose to set up a structure and live in wormhole space permanently. Whether you plan on staying a while or you're simply day tripping, knowing how to navigate wormholes safely is a valuable skill that will set you apart as a talented explorer in EVE Online.